All right, guys. Today we're going to be talking about Death Knight and specifically why you should give it a try in Midnight. Now, you may be coming back to the game right now thinking, what class do I play? Should I play something that I've already played before? Should I give something else a shot? And now is a better time than any to give Death Knight a chance if you've looked at it and thought, it looks kind of cool, but I don't know if I'd enjoy it. Should I give it a try? I want to take this time to explain to you the 5 reasons that I think that you should play Death Knight in Midnight. And I am an avid Death Knight enjoyer. I could make this video 10 hours long, but I want to try and save you some time, so I've limited it to just the 5. Now, before we get started, I also just want to add, I'm feeling a little under the weather. I just got a new tattoo, and I'm going to be drinking some water, and I apologize if that bothers anybody. But Midnight is coming out really soon, and I think it's really important that you guys have this video and have this information so you can make your decision. So let's get started. Reason number 1 is that Frost and Unholy just got massive reworks. And Death Knight is an older class. It's been around since Wrath of the Lich King, and a lot of its design showed that. When you were doing dungeons, you would be like, man, I hate that I have to stand still in this thing that I drop on the ground and it feels clunky, and I just wish that it felt more modern. And Blizzard heard that and they took that personally. I glaze Blizzard a lot, I know I do, but they have done such a good job in redesigning these specializations to feel modern, to feel fresh, to feel like they are designed for 2026 and beyond, right? When you walk into a dungeon now, you feel like your damage does damage the way that it needs to in order to contribute. When you're in the raid, you feel like your damage, you're able to maintain uptime on the boss where you wouldn't have been able to do that before. The gameplay is different now than it did when Death Knight was first released. And for a while, it was kind of just left to be this clunky mess. No more. Okay, Death Knight is very smooth. It's very modern now. It feels very good to play. If you've never played it before, or even if you've tried it in the past and you were like, this is clunky, man, I'm not doing this, give it another shot because it plays a lot different now. So that's reason number 1. Reason number 2 is that you are the tankiest class in the game. And this is for PvE, by the way, okay? Rogues, I see you in PvP. Mages, I see you in PvP. Listen, PvE, player versus environment, right? Death Knight is the tankiest class in the game. And part of that is due to passive mitigation. You have a lot of armor, you have passive magic defense, and some of that is due to active mitigation. So that means you have really effective spells for protecting yourselves against damage. And so this is really important. And I think that I'm biased, right? So I'm trying to be, this is me trying not to be biased, but I think that it is important that this remains the case. And the reason for this is that Death Knight doesn't bring a group buff. Okay, you don't bring a group buff to your team. Death Knight does not bring a ton of mobility. Death Knight does not bring, a bloodlust. What you do bring is the ability to be a rock. You are reliable. Okay, when you go into the group, people might not remember the fact that they got a 3% buff from somebody else, but they're going to remember that you were the only one still alive in a big pull in the dungeon. You were the only DPS that lived. They're going to remember that, and they're going to be like, man, thankfully we brought this guy because everyone else keeps dying. This feeling of being reliable and bringing that to the group, being consistent and doing the job that you needed to do, it's a nice feeling. You can leave the dungeon feeling proud that, like, yeah, we didn't time it, but you know what? I lived. I did what I needed to do. It is what it is. That's a good feeling. Okay. Being the rock and being stable in the group, I think is so important. And I would love a group buff. I mean, I would love it. But if you are thinking about trying out Death Knight, know that that is how a lot of groups view you. Is he's going to do damage and he's going to live. Let's take him. Right? And trust me, you end up doing that. So that kind of leads me into the next thing, and that is playstyle. Reason number 3 is the playstyle. Now, Frost, Unholy, and Blood have different niches, right? And I'm gonna talk about all of them really quickly. But Frost is 500 milligrams of testosterone. It is a double overhead strike with a two-handed weapon. It is slamming people with massive frost strikes, slamming people with killing machine procs. It feels like you are a melee juggernaut. You are up close fighting them. You are swinging your giant rune axe and you are cleaving people down, shooting out ice everywhere as you do it, calling in frost worms to breathe ice on all of your enemies. It is so fucking cool, man. like if you've never tried Frost, just if you've never tried Death Knight in general, and you're like, oh, I wonder if Death Knight feels like you feel strong. Like your abilities, they've got some oomph to them, you know? It's cool. Highly recommend. Now, Unholy is a bit different than Frost. Unholy also has a big rune blade, and you are in the front lines, and you're able to do damage in the front lines. But you're also now a necromancer. I mean, Unholy used to have some pets that it summoned. You got a lot of pets that you summon now. You full necromancer fantasy. It's very cool because you are summoning ghouls, you are summoning abominations, you're summoning undead sorcerers. I mean, if you've watched Solo Leveling, you're like Sun Jin Woo, man, because you're not just summoning all of this stuff, you're in the front lines too, and you're doing damage as well. It feels like you are not just some necromancer in the back lines, you're like the commander leading the charge. It is very cool. You've got ranged attacks, you've got melee attacks, you summon ranged pets, you summon melee pets, you summon big pets. It's so awesome. So if you've like pet classes, maybe you like Demonology Warlock, but you don't want to be sitting in the back and you don't want to be having to hard cast, here's the answer for you, man. Unholy all the way. Now, finally, we have Blood. And I talked about how cool they were, right? Frost is so cool. Unholy is so cool. If you're looking for a tank that feels like the main character, Blood Death Knight. Blood Death Knight is so cool because you have so much self-sustainability that it doesn't matter if your healer isn't doing their job healing you, because the best healer in the world cannot save a bad Blood Death Knight. But if you master Blood Death Knight, you feel like with enough time, you can tank the entire dungeon. Like you keep sending them, right? You are the wall against which all of the enemies break. Like you feel immortal because you have full self-healing. You are using blood magic to create shields of blood around yourself. You're using bones from your enemies to create shields of their bones to block their attacks. I mean, how metal is that, man? Like, it is just so cool. Blizzard delivered on the class fantasy with the playstyle of these 3 specializations, and they just keep getting better. The Apex talents coming out for these make the gameplay loop feel smoother. It feels cooler. If you like how they play in pre-patch, you're going to love how they play in Midnight. You've got a good variety of 2 DPS specs that feel different from each other, as well as a tank that feels like no other tank in the game. And I really, really encourage you to try all 3 specializations and see which one you like the most. Okay, I spent a lot of time on that on the playstyle, but it's a big portion of it, right? Is how it feels. And so when we talk about how something feels, this brings me to my 4th reason, and that is the lore. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with the lore, maybe you didn't play back in the day, you don't know much about Death Knight, I'm going to be a bit vulnerable here, okay? And if you guys want to rip me apart in the comments or whatever for it, it's okay. Life was unkind to me growing up. And like many people, I had struggles. And as a kid trying to figure out who I wanted to be, playing a game where you find a character that has some serious self-worth issues, right? You find a character that is kind of dealt a shitty hand, and then takes that and says, you know what? I'm gonna do good anyways. And I know I have this shitty hand, but I'm going to be something. I'm going to contribute. I can still be a hero. I can still do good things. That is the core of Death Knight, and that is the core of how all of the lore is written about Death Knight. And so when you go and you interact with NPCs and you know, you can never live down the fact that you did bad stuff or you have a bad past. That stuff doesn't go, it's not washed away with Death Knight, and I really like that. It is about how can I still do some good? And anyone that has had, and I know a lot of people have had, a similar story of maybe things weren't always the best, but they rose above it and they tried to do good in the world anyway and be a good person anyways, be as good as they could. And that is what Death Knight is about. And I just think if you connect with that story at all, please go back and just play the intro to the Death Knight campaign, because some of the best storytelling in any video game ever. Some of the best storytelling ever. And a lot of that stuff is carried into the new expansions. I really hope I really hope they keep developing on that. But a lot of people draw comparisons to Demon Hunter. And because Demon Hunters are like, I've sacrificed everything. What have you given? And they, they're very angsty and dark magic as well. I think that the main difference is that Demon Hunters they're very angry. They're filled with rage. And Death Knights are more stoic acceptance, right? And so if you're a person that cares about the lore, listen, I love the lore because it's an MMO. If I didn't want the lore, I would go and play, something else. But if that's important to you at all, I think Death Knight has some of the best lore in the game. And that leads me to reason 5. Some of the best lore in the game leads to some of the best drip, man. Number 5 is transmog. Death Knight has some of the best transmog in the entire game. Oh my god. Oh my god, does Blizzard cook with whoever is the art designer for Death Knight? Dude, let me shake your hand. They do such a good job on the designs for the Death Knight sets, and I don't even think people realize it, because they don't have to go this hard. Let me give you an example, okay? The tier 2 set for Death Knight got released. And first things first, you look at this and you're like, that is the Lich King's helmet, right? You're like, this, whoa, that looks really cool. I'm gonna walk you through a couple pieces of this and just show you the amount of love and care that Blizzard puts into Death Knight sets for whatever reason, but they do it. Look, the hood is a reference to the starting hood of the Death Knight intro campaign. When you start in, you're wearing a hood, and as you gain power, you eventually get a helmet. That's obviously the Lich King's helmet. So the hood is a reference to the starting, I think it's called like the Acolyte's hood or something like that. The thing that you start out with. The legs are the same way. You start out with wearing sort of like a plate robe, I guess. And eventually you get, armored Serenite legs and armored Serenite leg guards. And so it's sort of this like combination of that, right? You have a reference to the robe that you wore, and then the leg, it's not quite a robe anymore. You get the armored legs. The shoulders are the forges that you forge your first rune blade on. They're a reference to the forges. You are wearing the rune forges on your shoulders, right? So all of these things, they're combining references to the Death Knight intro campaign, and they're giving reference to your first experience as Death Knight in this armor set. And so I don't know if they do that. Listen, I'm not someone who plays everything in the game to a high level at all. Maybe they do this level of care with the other classes in the game, but for Death Knight, man, they definitely, like, when there's meaning behind the art, I think that makes the art so much cooler. So anyways, those are my 5 reasons. Hopefully by the end of this, you're like, okay, Death Knight sounds modern. They've got cool drip. They've got cool lore. And I've got some gameplay options. You know, I hope that you leave this video and you say, I'm going to give it a shot. And if you are thinking about giving it a shot and you want to learn more about Death Knight, you just want to talk it through, or you want to see someone play it a bit more, I'm actually going to be streaming in Midnight. I've decided finally I'm gonna give into some Twitch streaming. So if you want to check out Twitch, and it's just like been me and my friends. So if it's not like a large crowd, don't feel intimidated at all. Come and hang out. Talk with me about Death Knight. Talk with me about Midnight. Come over to Skull and Bones TV, and we can hang out. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Suffer well.